Did you know that stop boxes are not just for guitars? It's a fact. And today we're actually going to explore Universal Audio's line of stop boxes with keyboards and drum machines, so stick around. Chris Cline here with Alma Music in San Antonio, and as I said in the opening, we're going to talk about stop boxes and drum machines and synthesizers today. Universal Audio has offered 3 amazing new stop boxes. They sound fantastic, and they're going to offer you just a whole palette of different flavors, textures, sounds, modulations, delays, reverbs that you can get or incorporate into your keyboard and drum machine setup. Now, I'm sure you've seen Cooper demonstrate some of these boxes already on the guitar channel, but we're not talking about guitars today. We're talking about drum machines and synthesizers because there's just no end to what you can do when you incorporate pedals like these. For those of you that are familiar with Universal Audio already, we recently discussed the Apollo line, their interfaces, preamps, what they sound like, what they can do for you, different configurations. And today we're going to start exploring their effects processors. Now, Universal Audio has a long history of creating amazing plugins for your DAW that are going to be run off of their satellite processing boxes or with the use of their interfaces that have the processing technology built in. They've taken some of those algorithms and plugged them into these individual stop boxes here to give you a little more flexibility if you're, let's say you're a giggy musician, or you want to take some of the sounds that you've dialed in on your album out on the road or wherever. This allows you to do that. The 3 boxes they have right now are the Starlight Echo Station, the Golden Reverberator, and the Astra Modulation Machine. These are going to do exactly what's in the name. Delays and echoes, and it gets a little deeper than that. Really, really beautiful, lush reverbs, and then more modulation. This is going to modulate to the Starlight, but the Astra gives you a little bit more. Chorus, flange, tremolo, the list goes on, all time-based, very, very killer. So the build of these boxes is really, really stellar, encased in steel, really, really firm, great build. The inputs and outputs are really, really nice. And then the pots feel great. They have just the right amount of give to them. Toggle switches feel really, really nice and sturdy as well. And then your switches at the bottom that you are going to stomp on also feel really, really good. It should be noted that this is a true bypass and that the switching is silent. So if you are a giggy musician, when you turn these pedals on and off, you're not going to hear it. Another thing that happens with these boxes too, all 3 of them, is if you turn the pedal off, any effect that's still running is going to spill over. So it's not just going to turn the effect right off, which can be really, really jarring. Moving from my right to the left, we have the Starlight Echo Station. Now, the Starlight Echo Station has 3 primary algorithms. So you have a tape, you have an analog, DMM, and then you also have what they just call pristine, which is a really, really nice digital algorithm. Now, the tape algorithm is emulating an Echoplex, which is a really, really cool but temperamental tape echo machine. The way it works is you have a series of heads, and by changing the speed of the tape, you change the timing of the delay that's happening between the heads. Those boxes are really, really cool, but they're temperamental. Tapes can break, heads get dirty, and so on and so forth, and then it just starts to degrade over time. They've emulated it here in this box, and it sounds really, really fantastic. You also have your analog DMM, which is a reproduction of Electro Harmonix's Deluxe Memory Man. That is a BBD style delay, BBD meaning Bucket Brigade device, which started to become really, really popular. I believe it was invented in the late 60s, but they really started to become popular in the 80s. And basically the way that works is you have a series of capacitors that hold the signal and then let it go. Well, they've emulated it here as well, and it sounds really, really cool. It's really true to the sound of those old delay pedals as well. It's kind of a funky, grainy sound, really, really neat. And then below that, you have your pristine, which is going to give you a really, really clean digital delay signal, and it's going to offer more modulation as well. So you can start getting into choruses and other types of modulation effects that are all time-based, just like with a delay box or an echo box like the Starlight. We have some demos for you. We're going to play those for you now. We're going to give you 4 different choices, and you're going to see those on the screen with different parameters that are associated with the clips that you're going to hear. And in these clips, I used basically what you're seeing here on the table: a drum brute, Roland TR606, SH101, and some of the other devices that I used were a Cyclone Analogic TT78, which is a recreation of Roland's CR78. I also used a Blofeld Strike Fet for strings, and you're going to hear more of that when we get to the Astra. My Fender Rhodes and some other cool devices, which I'll cover here in a little bit. So let's take a listen to what the Starlight can do for us. So next up is the Golden Reverberator. Once again, same build, super sturdy, great pots, great toggles. And they give you 3 fantastic algorithms right here in the box that are switchable from right here. The first being what they call the Spring 65, which basically emulates some of the best spring tanks from old tube amplifiers from the 60s and 70s. Below that, you have the Plate 140. Now, for those of you that are familiar with plate reverbs and the number 140 specifically, they modeled an EMT 140 plate reverb, which was created in Germany in the late 50s. Now, for those of you that know a little more about the history and the size and the form factors of plate reverbs, the 140 specifically weighs about 500 to 600 pounds, and it's a gigantic hulking device. And it needs to be isolated. If you're walking by a plate reverb during a mixdown, you're going to hear footsteps going through the reverb. They have meticulously crafted or created an algorithm that sounds like a 140. And they have this plugin as well if you get into their suite of plugins, if you have a UAD processor. And it just sounds fantastic. And then the next is going to be your Hall 224. So we've got another number here. The 224 basically is representing Lexicon's 224 digital reverb that came out in the late 70s. Lexicon has been a staple in studios all over the world for 4.5, almost 5 decades now, starting with the 224, then the 300, the 480L, and then the 960. For those of you that have studio experience and you walk into a studio that's all teched out, state-of-the-art, and then you see this big blue and white Texas Instruments looking cheap calculator thing sitting in the middle of the console, that is the Lexicon Lark that allows you to control the parameters of that reverb unit. Well, that's built into here as well. You can change the modulation of some of these effects. You can change the decay, the pre-delay, the time that it takes for the reverb to actually fire after the initial signal, the mix, and the same can be said about the Starlight as well. You can change the modulation, the mix, the times, all kinds of things. But with this here, the reverbs they sound so good. And as I was digging into it, I'm thinking these pedals could also be used as an effect send and return if you're mixing at home, or maybe you have some sort of live rig and you want to get more of this reverb tone across your mix. Just plug this into your console and use it as a standalone effects processor and not just a stomp box. You can do that with all three. So with that being said, let's go ahead and listen to the Golden Reverberator. And once again, I've used a selection of instruments, Drum Brute, from Arturia, Roland's TR-606, the TT-78, and various synthesizers. So if you're using these effects in the box, if you have a UAD rig at home, the satellites or one of the interfaces with the processing power, well, it's nice to have those plugins with you in here out on the road. So without further ado, let's take a listen to this box. And the final stomp box we're going to cover today in the UAD lineup is the Astra modulation machine. And again, I can't stress this enough. The build's awesome, great pots. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. Great pots. And great toggle switches. Everything is just built so well. And the thing that's nice about this is this, being a modulation machine, is going to emulate some really, really cool pedals that go back to the 70s and 80s, as well as older tremolo effects that were incorporated into amps back in the 60s. So the first being the Chorus Brigade, and there's that word again, brigade. It's emulating a BBD style Well, the Boss CE1 Chorus Ensemble. So, the BBD Bucket Brigade circuit is used primarily for delays, but that's all that modulation is you're taking a delayed signal and you're modulating the pitch or the volume to get flangers, choruses, tremolos, what have you, and they're all right here in this box, in this sturdy little box. A Boss CE1 today, I don't know how much they are. It's a funky looking, like it's a brown gray box with orange writing on it. And this does such a fantastic job of emulating that highly coveted stomp box and so much more. The flanger on here is also a doubler. Flange, and let's talk about flange and phase real fast. Flanging comes from, or the name comes from, the flanges on reel-to-reel tape machines. So the way that we'd flange back in the old days when we didn't have these digital algorithms is we would have the same signal on 2 tape machines. You'd press play at the same time and hope that they're perfectly in sync, and then you would tap on the flange, which would create a change in the phase of the 2 signals, and that's how you get that sweeping sound. It's very distinct. It sounds like an airplane flying by. Now, phaser is a little bit different in that it focuses on certain bands of frequencies where the flanger is focusing on a certain point in time. A phaser is doing the same thing, but it's emphasizing bands of frequencies. The doubler, it's going to do just that. It's going to double your signal to give you a little more width. There's a psychoacoustic phenomena called the Haas effect. And basically what that is, we don't perceive an audible delay or echo up until about or after 50 milliseconds. So we can use this effect doubling now. And this, you're definitely going to hear it double, but we can also use this effect to make something sound a little bit wider than it actually is. Going down to the last switch, or to the last selection on here as we toggle down, we have the Tremolo 65, which is going to emulate a classic tremolo from a classic amplifier, but it's also going to give you a little bit of that tube gain or tube grit in the algorithm. And it sounds so good. It sounds amazing on a Fender Rhodes, which we're actually going to listen to here shortly. So, as we were talking with both Golden and Starlight, you also have a lot of controls that give you a lot of flexibility on how you can manipulate these sounds, from the speed, the depth, the intensity, and then you have your shade, shape, and mode. Now, shade, shape, and mode are going to differ depending upon the type of algorithm you're using and which selection you're using. And so when you're hearing these sound demos, you'll notice that there's going to be some parameters that are listed below, and that's telling you what I actually dialed in when I was creating these sound clips. So once again, let's quit talking about it and let's listen to this. Specifically on a Fender Rhodes and a Strike Fet. Hearing a phaser on a string machine is really, really cool, especially if you're into like old Italian soundtracks, bands like Tangerine Dream, Goblin, they use it so much. And so I kind of went for the traditional, the staple for the phaser and the tremolo, and I'm using a lot of Fender Rhodes with this and the string machine. So let's, once again, I'm gonna stop talking, let's listen to it. Well, we would love to hear your thoughts. It was a lot of information, and we didn't get too into the specifics on every pedal because of, once again, you're going to see that information on the demos, the clips that we provided. And while I'm here, we actually just recently launched a SoundCloud page that has even more demos, substantially more. So go ahead and, cruise to that link down below and see what we have going on, because we're going to be filling that up with not just keyboards and synths, but we'll be doing guitars and other things as well. So if you want to get a better idea of how these sound, more about the parameters, you can get that information from our SoundCloud page. So go and visit, please. It's brand new. But if there's more that you want to know about these pedals, if we didn't cover something, let us know in the comments below. Please, we can't cover everything, but we try to be diligent in answering all of your questions and trying to create more content that's based off of your queries. We want this to be as friendly and as open as possible. It's a great resource for all of us to learn more about universal audio, how these things work, synthesizers, drum machines, guitars with Cooper and Chris, more with Zach and his philosophy on keyboards, which is always fun to be a part of. Much different stance to me, but I love to listen to him talk about keyboards. It's a lot of fun. But anyhow, we hope that you enjoyed all this. Subscribe. We have so much more content coming up. We're going to be doing a best pedals for Christmas time as well, and there's just a lot more to cover, and we're so thrilled that we get to do this for you. And I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm going to stop here. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the Universal Audio demo and clips, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.